enemies of the United States of America in close combat.
I am a guardian of freedom and the American way of life.
I am an American soldier.
I am an American soldier.
I am an American soldier.
I'm Army Strong. They're strong, and there's Army Strong. See what it takes at GoArmy.com.
Sometimes writers feel lost, unsure why a passage may not be working. It takes another set of eyes to help us nurture our writing into full maturity. Blackwolf Editorial Services. We strive to enable writers to develop and grow, offering manuscript critiques and line edits. They also offer assistance on generating a writer's Blackwolf Editorial Services. BlackwolfEditorial.com.
Hey folks, I want to introduce you to a friend of mine, Dr. Richard Harden. We are on the same mission, which is waking up America. We just have different paths. So stay tuned for some information on how you can keep up with Richard and all his work.
Visit Richard's website at rahardin.com. That's the World Wide Web at rahardin.com. At his website, you can see a summary of the 6 books he has written, where purchases may be made. He also has a link to 18 videos on YouTube and several blogs about Christian belief. If you prefer, visit Amazon.com/Kindle and type in Richard Harden to see and purchase his books.
Every day, the men and women of the United States Marine Corps stand ready to defend the American way of life. The few, the proud, the Marines.
The following message contains a special offer for listeners of this station. Are you a man over 40? Are you constantly looking for the nearest bathroom? Do you wake up multiple times a night to use the bathroom? Right now, Perfect Prostate is sending out free bottles of their groundbreaking new formula to listeners of this station. Perfect Prostate Formula was developed by medical doctor Mitchell Fleischer, and its ingredients have been clinically studied to reduce your frequent nighttime bathroom visits and promote healthy urine flow. Right now, preferred customers get their first bottle of Perfect Prostate absolutely free. There's nothing to lose. Perfect Prostate is guaranteed to reduce that constant urge to use the bathroom, especially at night, and promote healthy urine flow. Don't wait. Call now for your free bottle. Just pay shipping and processing. Dial 1-800-675-0251. That's 1-800-675-0251. Supplies are limited. 1 free bottle per household. Call now. Dial 1-800-675-0251. That's 1-800-675-0251.
KLRN Radio has advertising rates available. We have rates to fit almost any budget. Contact us at advertising@klrnradio.com.
You're listening to the Spark Radio Network, internet radio like you've never heard before. Innovation, creativity, and imagination are all said to begin with a spark. So fasten your seatbelt and take the ride of your life and listen for the spark.
You are listening to KLRN Radio, where liberty and reason still reign.
My name is Jessie. I'm a United States Special Forces widow. It gives me a unique perspective on the world around me. Listen, I'll tell you how I see it, and I won't form. This is my POV.
Alright, how y'all doing out there tonight? Yes, it is Jessie. Yes, I am back with you. First, I have to give a shout out to Dave Brewer. He stood in for me at the 11th hour. It was clear for various reasons I was not going to be able to go on the air. It just wasn't going to be possible. So Dave agreed to do his best and stand in my stead. A little rocky, I was trying to produce for him, but I wasn't all with it, as he told you I wasn't feeling so well last night. But I am back with you today, and yep, show prep. Now, before we get to that pile of papers. Got a couple other notes to pass along. Okay? And these are important, so pay attention. Yeah, I said pay attention. Come on, you can do it. You can do it. I know you can. All right. Upcoming Christmas holidays and specials as far as KLRN radio is concerned. Various shows have already recorded or put out their own Christmas specials. All of these Christmas specials, and a few you haven't heard. Promise, we got some new ones. Promise. Will be aired starting, you ready for this? Midnight, Christmas Eve. Yes, midnight the 23rd into the 24th will be the start of our Christmas special. Now, don't worry. That's going to be the Conversations in Science one. And Dr. Judy L. Moore had asked me if I could air it so that it would be available in New Zealand at the right time. And I told her, of course I can. Be happy to do it, Doc. Doc. What's up, Doc? All right. Moving right along. At Scott Horvath. Yes, person I follow on Twitter. Yes, Scott. You did not get your usual shout out today. Sorry about that. I was not doing my own show, and it was all I could do to get Dave Brewer to actually get the show done. Never mind throwing shout outs at him. So I apologize, but you stay in the fight, and you will kick cancer's 6 o'clock. All right. Now, just as a reminder, actually, as a note, we're going to be bringing up, if you've ever been to the KLRNradio.com website, what? You haven't been? You've been listening to this show and never visited the station's website? Excuse me? Excuse you, really? Why don't you just hop on over there? Now, we have a second stream that we bring up for special events. You might have seen it during the presidential debates and things like that. In fact, I'm in the chat room. Well, we're going to be bringing that second stream up starting on Christmas Eve. Excuse me, Mr. Frog is still hanging paw. I know, he's my ever-present friend. But anyway, we will be bringing up that second stream on Christmas Eve, maybe before, so you might want to keep an eye on the KLRN radio website. And what are we going to have? Christmas music and a few Hanukkah songs. Had to throw in a few Hanukkah songs. Man, I'm Jewish. I'm allowed to throw in Hanukkah songs. So I guarantee you they won't be as heavily played as the Christmas ones, but you may hear the occasional one. We may even test out something new. On demand? Yes. Now, it won't be played instantly, but should be played within a few moments. So I am working on getting that sorted out for you. Yeah. Station manager Ann's helping too. What? You didn't realize we had a station manager? Oh yeah. We do. and her name is Anne. And she does a lot behind the scenes. What's she do? Alright, well, we'll start. She built the website. She keeps everything up and running. Let's see. That isn't enough. She keeps all of us on track with shows and schedules and makes sure all kinds of interesting things happen. So, yeah, she's the one that lets the rest of us get on with our daily lives. Alright, sorry, I was distracted by what sounded like a dead, dying animal outside. No clue what it is, but I'll figure it out later. So, moving right along. Back to that stack of show prep. Alright, I've got a whole stack of show prep. We are going to discuss some of the same things Dave Brewer wrote you yesterday, because I got a little bit of different spin on it. And yeah, I was trying to get him to tell you what I was thinking, but he hasn't developed the ability to read minds. So, China returns the underwater drone. The U.S. condemns its seizure, calling it an unlawful seizure. China has returned a U.S. underwater drone taken by one of China's naval vessels in the disputed South China Sea, after what it said were, quote, friendly talks, unquote, with the United States, which reiterated criticism of the unlawful seizure. The taking of the unmanned underwater vehicle in international waters near the Philippines triggered a diplomatic protest and speculation about whether it would strengthen U.S. President Donald Trump's hand as he seeks a tougher line with China. A Chinese naval ship took the drone, which the Pentagon said uses unclassified, commercially available technology to collect oceanographic data, on Thursday about 50 nautical miles northwest of Subic Bay in the Philippines. China's defense ministry said in a brief statement the drone had been given back to the United States on Tuesday after friendly consultations between the Chinese and U.S. sides. The handover work for the U.S. underwater drone was smoothly completed in relevant waters in the South China Sea at midday. The defense ministry declined to give more details about the handover when contacted by Reuters. The Pentagon said the vehicle had been handed over to the guided missile destroyer USS Mustin, where it had been unlawfully seized. It called on China to comply with international law and refrain from further efforts to impede lawful U.S. activities. The U.S. remains committed to upholding principles and norms of international freedoms of navigation and overflight, and will continue to fly, sail, and operate in the disputed South China Sea wherever international law permits us. And that is according to Peter Cook. And here's the official press statement from the Department of Defense. Today, the People's Liberation Army Navy Vessel 510 returned a U.S. Navy Ocean Glider unmanned underwater vehicle to the United States near the location where it had been unlawfully seized on December 15th. USS Mustin DDG-89 received the vehicle for the U.S. in international waters approximately 50 nautical miles northwest of Subic Bay. The Seas UUV is a sovereign immune vessel of the United States Navy, which was conducting routine operations in international waters of the South China Sea in full compliance with international law. It had just completed a pre-programmed military oceanographic survey route, was returning to the nearby USNS Bowditch. Ocean gliders such as this are regularly used by the U.S. Navy and other militaries throughout the year. This incident was inconsistent with both international law and standards of professionalism for conduct between navies at sea. The U.S. has addressed those facts with the Chinese through the appropriate diplomatic and military channels and have called on Chinese authorities to comply with their obligations under international law and refrain from further efforts to impede U.S. lawful activities. All right. Moving right along. Unless you live under a rock, and I don't think any of my listeners do. At least I'd like to think you don't. Come on, you've got me around. You don't really think you're uninformed, do you? Well, I'm here to tell you, you keep an eye on this show, and you can't be uninformed. I won't let you. So, anyway, unless you live under a rock, you know that there was a Russian ambassador assassinated. And I'm going to say assassinated yesterday. Why? A off-duty Turkish police officer basically walked up behind the man and fired 8 rounds. Now, for those of you who didn't tune in yesterday, and I understand if you may have been a little leery with Dave Brewer running the show, I was sitting here trying to guide him as best as possible, but we are going to cover a little bit of this because I've got a news story about Russian diplomats. All right, this is audio of the gunman after he fired the shots. I think Aloha Granola Bar was clearly heard. Let's just rewind just a little bit of it. Yep, I heard it. And on that basis, and that basis alone, not to mention all the other stuff, I'm calling this a terrorist attack. Now, there are some conspiracy theorists out there that say that this particular Turkish off-duty police officer was a CIA asset. Why would we want to stir up worsen diplomatic relations between Turkey and Russia? Why? It doesn't make any sense, folks. So take off your tinfoil hat and let's run along. Well, just hours after the Russian ambassador was gunned down in Turkey by an assassin, another high-ranking diplomat was found shot in the head at his Moscow home. What? What? Oh, yeah. So not one, but 2 Russian diplomats died yesterday. The news of the second one was largely overshadowed by the news of the first, because the first was caught on video. The first was many other things that the second was not. So So the first was found shot in the head, and his name was the second was Peter Polshakov. He was 56. He was a senior figure in the Latin American department of the Russian Foreign Ministry. Some local reports suggest Polshakov may have left the Foreign Ministry. We don't know if he was working for the Russian government when he was shot, and we don't know exactly when he died. So this will be an interesting story to follow, folks. It really will. My suspicion, and this is pure speculation, Russian mob. Yeah, Russian mob. Now, of course, it's often hard to separate Russian mob from FSB, but what can I say? That's where I'm going with it. At least until I can find more information. So far I can find bit blurb. I do have one more audio clip about the shooting of the ambassador. And this is the voice of a translator who's translating for Putin, giving his official statement.
We should offer to this murder is stepping up our fight against terror, and the criminals will feel the heat. The Russian Investigative Committee has already launched an investigation into this killing. It's been tasked with forming a working group which will have to fly to Ankara and join its Turkish colleagues in jointly investigating this murder. This is something we agreed on in my telephone conversation with the Turkish president just now. We have to know who organized the killing, who gave orders to the assassin.
So, Putin is taking a very strong stance. Remember our Turkish-Syria-Russian scorecard? Alright, Bashar al-Assad, propped up by Russia. Bashar al-Assad is the one that's been attacking Aleppo and the Free Syrian Army. Now, just as a reminder, the U.S. coalition is working in the area, but as Lieutenant General Townsend will remind all of us, Aleppo is not the coalition's concern. You don't remember? Take a listen.
What, if anything, you all are seeing in terms of the evacuations out of Aleppo? Are you seeing any people moving out of Aleppo at all?
I watched Aleppo on TV. It's horrible, like most of you. And I read intelligence, so I get special access to intelligence about Aleppo, but Aleppo is not in our charter here. So I'm blessed, although it's a curse. The complicator is we have a civil war right next to our war.
All right, so Aleppo is not in their charter. Translation, the U.S. coalition has nothing to do with Aleppo. We are almost at the bottom of the hour, but we've got time for just another couple of stories. UN passed a resolution to provide monitors for the situation in Aleppo, and I've got a couple, at least one good audio clip on it.
Stand ready to scale up our presence and efforts across the entire city in line with the resolution and international humanitarian law. This can be done immediately, but only if the parties live up to this resolution and the most basic of legal obligations. As the number of those dying, displaced, and fleeing continues to rise, we need the whole international community to come together to bring an end to the crisis, reiterating the need for political solution to this crisis.
And that was the UN calling for a political solution to the crisis. And while I do see that a military solution is not practical, I'm not so sure you're going to be able to implement any kind of diplomatic solution without some kind of force to back it up. I do have another statement from Samantha Powers about the situation in Aleppo.
So, as you know, bombardment, deaths, or they lately have had the chance
So people in Aleppo are dying even as the buses are starting to roll. Let's pick that up again for just another moment.
Today's resolution, I think, again in the sense that at least that presence, there may be some deterrent there, even if people are fortunate enough, as they see it, to get on buses. We have seen people pull off buses, their valuables stolen. Fighting age, range,
So the United Nations Security Council was able to get a resolution passed, but how soon they can get in there, let's just hope it's sooner rather than later. Because I gotta tell you, the situation in Aleppo is really, really bad. My oh my, where has the time gone? It is time to take that commercial break. Gotta pay them bills, folks. Alright, I will see you on the other side.
You can lay down if you wanna. You can run away if you wanna. You can pretend that this is totally okay if you wanna. You can play dead if you wanna. Forget what they said if you wanna. Turn your back on the country needing you right now. But I don't wanna.
In
these uncertain economic times, you've got to do whatever you can to save money. One of our biggest expenses can be our cars, especially when unexpected repair bills hit. Not anymore. If you own a vehicle with less than 130,000 miles, is less than 12 years old, has a warranty about to expire, or even no warranty at all, you could stop paying for car repairs. Roadside assistance, towing, and rental coverage are all included. Don't wait for the next repair. Make one free call right now to see if you qualify. If your vehicle is less than 12 years old, has less than 130,000 miles, even if it's out of warranty, paying for car repairs can become a thing of the past. Call us right now and get your car protected before your next repair bill hits. Get protection and no more repair bills. Call 800-696-1030. Again, 800-696-1030. That's 800-696-1030. 800-696-1030.
All writers are prone to becoming so attached to our characters and stories that we struggle to see why a passage may not be working. It takes another set of eyes to help us nurture our writing to full maturity. At Black Wolf Editorial Services, we strive to enable writers to develop and grow, shaping stories into masterpieces that can stand the test of time. Editing services are provided for all genres and all age categories. Services range from the critique of the short story through to line edits on full-length novels. We also offer assistance on generating writers' bios for your websites. We won't abandon you to the masses. We want to celebrate with you in your successes. Black Wolf Editorial Services, nurturing your writing into maturity. For a full list of services and prices, visit us at blackwolfeditorial.com.
I've owned my company for 14 years now, and I can tell you that payroll is a 4-letter word. I hate doing it. It eats up hours I don't have, and it costs me money I could be saving. But my accountant's too expensive, and I'm not sure who to call, but I know I need help.
We're Paychex, and we take all the hassles out of small business payroll. We save you time and money. It's easy. Call, fax, or give us your payroll information securely online, and we take care of the rest. We calculate the correct taxes, manage payments and direct deposits. We even send out your checks. Payroll doesn't need to be a 4-letter word anymore. We're so sure that we can save you time and money that we'll give you a month's payroll free. Just for calling 877-757-2782. Get 1 month's payroll for free. Call Paychex right now. 877-757-2782. That's 877-757-2782.
KLRN Radio has advertising rates available. We have rates to fit almost any budget. Contact us at advertising@klrnradio.com.
Alright, thank you for hanging in there with me over that commercial break. Gotta pay them bills and keep those advertisers happy. What can I say? Yesterday was a little bit hinky all the way around, and I'm not gonna deny it, but we're back on track today. Back to the Middle East. You thought I was done with the Middle East? Well, sort of, but not completely. I've got North Korea, Germany, Ukraine. We've already covered Russia. But I have a little bit more Ukraine and Raqqa, Syria, Aleppo news for ya. So, let's get started. Let's get the party started? Who knows? Who knows? I don't even deign to understand. And I thank every one of my listeners for tuning in. And just as a reminder, especially with this busy holiday season, if you miss me live, you can always catch me on Memorex. Jessie's POV is available on iTunes, Google Play, Blueberry, Pocket Cast, Podcast, and Spreaker, and many other locations. All right, back to the news. Several villages held by Daesh have been captured by the Syrian Democratic Force, a coalition of militias backed by the United States that includes a strong Kurdish contingent. An organization that monitors war was quoted as saying on Monday, but of course they don't mention what organization it was. The event is part of a military campaign backed by an international coalition led by the United States to drive Daesh from its Syrian capital of Raqqa. It follows Syrian Defense Force gains against jihadist groups across the north of the country. The strongest group in the Syrian Defense Force is the People's Protection Units, or the YPG, a Kurdish militia. But Washington has said that any operation to retake Raqqa should be predominantly Arab, the ethnicity of most of the city's residents. The latest advances in the countryside, about 50 kilometers, 30 miles away, west and north of Raqqa, follow an earlier phase of Syrian Defense Force gains on another front about 30 kilometers north of the city. 3 Syrian Defense Force soldiers were killed fighting Daesh after the capture of 5 villages. The Syrian Observatory for Human Rights, a Britain-based war monitor, was quoted saying on Monday, the Daesh had been back on the back foot in both Syria and Iraq, where it is under attack in Mosul, its biggest and most important possession, and after a string of U.S. airstrikes, many of its leaders have been killed this year. Earlier this month, it launched a surprise attack 160 kilometers southwest of Raqqa to retake the ancient desert city of Palmyra, which it had lost to the Syrian army. Now, I bring this up. Remember these weapons Lieutenant General Townsend mentioned.
What, if anything, you all are seeing in terms of the evacuations out of...
Wrong clip.
Your first question, I think, was about equipment seized at Palmyra by ISIL. So I'm not really exactly sure. They didn't send us an inventory of what they've seized there. We believe that it includes some armored vehicles and various guns and other heavy...
The U.S. has taken out those heavy armaments and guns. They are gone. That's good news, folks. And according to another report on the battle for Raqqa, the Syrian Democratic Forces, not Syrian Defense Force, Syrian Democratic Forces, have clashed with Daesh militants on the road to Jabar Castle on the Euphrates River, killing 9 of the extremist fighters. The clashes have come on this 10th day of the Syrian Democratic Forces' second stage of their Wrath of the Euphrates operation to liberate Daesh stronghold of Raqqa. Their forces have reached the Euphrates and retaken a large area northwest of Raqqa. During the first 10 days in the second stage of Operation Wrath of Euphrates, which was launched from directions of Hyadri and Kirdosan villages with the goal of liberating western Raqqa, fighters have liberated 97 villages, dozens of hamlets and strategic hills, in a total area of 1,300 square kilometers. 96 Daesh members were killed in the clashes, and 7 others were captured and taken captive, including 1 gang member who surrendered together with his family. The Syrian Democratic Forces have also suffered casualties during the offensive. 9 fighters were killed and 12 were wounded. Moving right along. Lieutenant General Townsend, the commander of the multinational coalition fighting Daesh, hopes to soon add Mosul, Iraq's second largest city, and Raqqa, Daesh's so-called capital in Syria, to the list of towns and villages that have been liberated from Daesh in the past year. However, he already has 100 towns and villages to his credit. Not to mention Fallujah, Rupa, Tikrit, Baji, Takara in Iraq, and Dabiq and Manjib in Syria. Dabiq is the key. Remember, it was the name of Daesh's magazine. In Syria, there are many troops from Fort Bragg that are supporting Special Operation Forces and the Syrian partners with logistical, medical, and artillery support. They include teams from the 18th Field Artillery Brigade deployed into the country with high-mobility rocket systems. In Iraq, U.S. troops are heavily involved in coalition efforts to advise and assist Iraqi forces, to include training, equipping, intelligence gathering, and fire support from air and ground platforms. 4 months into the deployment, Townsend said their efforts in Iraq and Syria have results far beyond those countries' borders. To make his point, he lists another set of locales: Paris, Brussels, Nice, and more recently Berlin. Then in the United States, Florida, Texas, and California. Each has been a target of Daesh or a Daesh-inspired attack. I think it's important to remember why we're doing this. It's easy to forget why we are here. The holiday season, Lieutenant General Townsend said Americans at home should be extra thankful for those serving overseas, fighting far from home to prevent attacks across the globe. Please do remember that while you may be safe at home, not everyone is. There are many men and women of the United States Armed Forces that will not be home for Christmas or New Year's. That brings me to another announcement I have. I am going to be working this weekend tirelessly to put together a special We Salute the Troops special where my listeners, callers, Facebook friends, Twitter friends, your neighbor, the little old lady that lives down the lane, the kid across the street, anybody who with a phone, a Google Hangouts, or a Skype connection can contact me, and I'll post the times and locations on both my website, on the KLRN radio website. I will be at my board the entire time. I will record your message to the troops stationed overseas. And I have ways of making sure the Pentagon and other Twitter feeds and things pick this up. So please think about that this weekend. I will probably do it. I got to do it before the weekend. Christmas is this weekend. All right, let's make a decision here. I'll do it on Thursday. Wednesday's a very busy day. I will be at my board all day Thursday. If you would like to record a greeting for our troops stationed overseas, Christmas, Hanukkah, New Year's, Kwanzaa, anything you want. Happy holidays. Nope, all I ask is family friendly. And remember, this is going to be aired for our troops overseas. Now, Aleppo's all but wrapped up from a military point of view. We can buckle up and get ready to do it all over again in Idlib and Raqqa. This isn't a mistake, but part of a strategy. You may have noticed whenever the Syrian regime, the Kurds, or others push al-Nusra, yes, that's who many of these militants are, out of their strongholds, they would flee to their de facto caliphate capital in Idlib. Likewise, when the Syrian regime would reconcile with rebel groups, this really meant that civilians stayed in place and the Nusra fighters were permitted to vacate the area and head to Idlib. Now the regime, along with the Russians, are going to pound Idlib into a parking lot. I'm not so sure, but I think it may be coming that way. I don't want to see it go that way, but it very much could. So Idlib is not a nature preserve for bunny rabbits. Every Russian and Syria bomb will fall on an orphanage or children's hospital. Cluster bombs will eradicate UNESCO World Heritage Sites. And cute and cuddly dogs and cats will starve on the streets in Idlib. Because it will be the next horrific site we are discussing. And let me see if I can find the clip. But Samantha Powers did mention some of that in her briefing. Let me see if I can find the clip. I didn't plan on using it, so I don't have it prepped. But let's see if I can play Remember and Guess.
Perform monitoring tasks alongside those.
Nope. We're still discussing the monitors. I'm just doing my darndest here.
From an already horrific baseline, further.
That was discussing South Sudan. Yes, I listen to all these press conferences I get you clips from, so you don't have to.
On the radio, by government officials, by opposition officials, and you have all heard in the last month out of
Alright, more South Sudan. I wasn't sure what she was getting at. We'll try one more spot. Nope. Alright, I can't find it, but Idlib is going to be the next catastrophe. And because Bashar al-Assad and Russia have now teamed up, which means they are now going to turn their collective wrath towards Idlib. Okay, I think I'm in the right vicinity.
I would caution you with regard to anything the Syrian ambassador says. Cigarette boxes, there's like a smoker's warning,
I love what she says. You got to listen to this next statement.
Should be like a smoker's warning here every time he opens his mouth.
He pointed to the podium.
Almost nothing that he has said over the life of this. Now, of course, the Syrian government doesn't want more monitors. They don't want the crimes of their soldiers. They have brought to this conflict a horrific sectarian agenda.
All right, I can't find the clip. On December 19th, the United Nations Security Council unanimously called for UN officials to observe the stalled evacuation of thousands of residents and fighters from the last rebel-held districts in the city of Aleppo, a process that began 4 days earlier with President Bashar al-Assad's regime and its allies regaining full control over Syria's largest city. The nearly 6-year-old Syrian civil war is entering a new phase. Assad's forces are overextended, depleted after years of fighting, and have had trouble keeping track of territory in other parts of Syria. The fall of Palmyra shows that Daesh is far from beaten and is poised to take advantage of Syria, Russian, and Iranian military resources stretched thin throughout Syria. Oh yeah, don't forget Iran. They've poked their nose in there too. After the fall of eastern Aleppo, there are signs of an emerging division of labor in Syria between the incoming Trump administration and that of President Vladimir Putin. Russia would continue its intensive airstrikes and logistical aid to help Assad recapture territory from rebels, while the United States would take the lead in the fight against Daesh. On December 10th, Defense Secretary Ash Carter announced that the Pentagon would send an additional 200 special forces to Syria, for a total of 500 U.S. troops on the ground to help train, advise, and assist. It says train and advise Syrian opposition groups who are fighting Daesh, especially around the city of Raqqa. Yes, we have troops in Syria, but it is a very small number and is exclusively special forces. And I'm going to point something out. As the Ballad of Green Beret states, the The Special Forces soldiers are trained to live off the land and blend in with the indigenous people. All right, we've got to move on to this story. From this story, because I'm not even halfway through my show prep, and we have 10 minutes. U.S. Treasury Department tightened sanctions against North Korean diplomats to the United States, requiring banks get special permission before granting them accounts. The United States removed an exemption in the broad economic sanctions against Pyongyang that had allowed U.S. banks to service North Korean diplomats without getting a specific permission from the Treasury Department Office of Foreign Asset Control. Banks will have to obtain a special license from OFAC before opening accounts, processing transactions, or extending credit for North Korean diplomats or their family members. Because U.S. officials have long said North Korea uses the bank accounts of diplomats to help Pyongyang conduct business around the world despite economic sanctions. So basically they will, for example, a U.S. intelligence official said that North Korea sells cigarettes and illegal drugs outside the country and uses diplomatic pouches to send cash back home. They actually used to sell cigarettes for hard currency in a store at the Kaesong Industrial Complex, but if you are a listener to this show, you know that that has been shut down. This was an interesting story. It seems there is an nascent rebel movement in North Korea attempting to depose North Korean dear leader Kim Jong-un. There have been reports of anti-Kim leaflets and a reduction in popularity for the North Korean strongman. This could be a reaction to extreme cruelty and human rights abuses Kim has perpetrated on his inner circle. No suspects have been reported detained as the regime's investigation is ongoing. However, it's certain that someone will be accused of the crime to make an example out of some poor souls. Up to 3 generations of a family could be put to death for such an offense. Anti-government messages such as overthrow Kim Jong-un and punish Kim Jong-un were reportedly scrawled over the images of the leader's grandfather and founder of the state, Kim Il-sung, whose face adorns the 5,000 Korean won bills. The bills were scattered across the streets of downtown Gyeong City, North Hamgyong Province, a popular commercial area less than a mile from the Chinese border. There have also been reports of graffiti and other instances of disrespect towards Kim in Pocheon County, Rangyang Province, and Chongjin City, North Hamgyong Province. A criticism has also been reported to be directed at Kim Il-sung, founder of the state. Kim has reportedly killed close relatives and members of the older elite in barbaric ways, including feeding them to starving dogs and killing them with anti-aircraft weapons. Many North Korean experts believe there is growing resentment against the young tyrant. That could be interesting. Got to keep an eye on that. A North Korean boat, a wooden boat, possibly of North Korean origin, was found near the coast of Japan, Tokyo's Coast Guard reported on Monday. 2 bodies were found on board the vessel discovered near the city of Sato in Niigata Prefecture on the west coast of Honshu Island. According to the report, the Coast Guard discovered the boat Saturday as it drifted near the Japanese coast. Investigators found 2 human skeletons and clothing on board. North Korean boats are being increasingly lost at sea, but some crew members survived to return to North Korea. Last week, South Korean naval vessels rescued 8 North Korean nationals adrift at sea, but all crew members said they wished to be repatriated. All fishermen were sent back across the maritime border Monday, according to Seoul's Unification Ministry. Japan is expected to carry out an evacuation drill to prepare for future North Korean provocations. Tokyo is planning their unprecedented exercise for March 2017 to get ready for a possible ballistic missile launch. Japan has previously conducted simulation training, but in the face of intensifying missile threats, the government has decided the training should involve the mobilization of people, according to the report. The evacuation is to be carried out using J-Alert, their version of the National Emergency Alert System. In accordance with Japan's national security law, the drills are to be conducted with the participation of the country's self-defense forces, police, maritime security, and fire department. In August, just as a reminder, North Korea fired a mid-range ballistic missile that landed in Japan's maritime exclusive economic zone. Tokyo failed to intercept the projectile. Alright, Germany. We only have a couple minutes left. We will race through this. German authorities Tuesday released a Pakistani asylum seeker suspected of driving a truck into a Berlin Christmas market and killing 12 people due to a lack of evidence. The truck smashed into wooden huts serving mulled wine and sausages on Monday evening at the foot of the Kaiser Wilhelm Memorial Church, one of Berlin's most famous landmarks. 45 people injured, 30 severely. Daesh claimed responsibility, saying the perpetrator was a soldier of the militant group. Note, that's what they use for people who radicalize themselves and don't receive direct instruction. Chief Federal Prosecutor's Office said in a statement it had been unable to prove that the suspect had been in the cabin of the truck at the time of the attack, and he said he denied any involvement. Earlier, Die Welt newspaper quoted an unnamed police chief saying, "We have the wrong man, and therefore in this situation, the true perpetrator is still armed at large and can cause fresh damage." Alright, DoD press release, and then I've got actually two things I'm going to do. And Rick, I'm going to run just a minute or so over. Sorry.
The United States is deeply concerned with the recent spike of violence in eastern Ukraine. Over just the last 2 days, 6 Ukrainian service members have been killed and 33 wounded in a Russian separatist attempt to seize additional Ukrainian territory, the highest two-day casualty figure that we've seen since June of 2015. Clear violation of Russia's commitments under the Minsk agreements. And once again, we call on Russia to exercise its considerable influence over the separatists to put a stop to the violence and to allow OSCE monitors full and unfettered access. We strongly support the Trilateral Contact Group's efforts to negotiate a ceasefire recommitment, allow Ukrainians on both sides of the line of contact, of course, to live more safe, more secure, and especially at this time of the holidays, we think
Alright, that's something you didn't expect. Ukraine. 2,900 explosions in a day, heavy artillery fire and tank fire returns to the front line. It's in Ukraine. An early morning artillery barrage started the latest bloody scrap in eastern Ukraine Sunday as Russian-backed militants and government troops clashed near the town of Svitlodarsk. A spokesman for the Ukrainian military, Colonel Andriy Viensko, said that 5 soldiers were killed and 16 wounded during the day-long battle that Russian-backed separatist forces had attempted to break through government lines. It was the single largest loss of life for Ukrainian troops in 5 months. A resident in the nearby separatist-controlled town who asked not to be identified said it was merely rocket tennis between the two sides. Liensko said Russian-backed fighters suffered about 50 casualties, but that figure could not be independently confirmed. An international monitoring group documented almost 3,000 explosions in the region Sunday, up from 700 Saturday and 100 on Friday. The majority of Sunday's detonations were recorded around Svitlodarsk. Despite multiple ceasefire attempts and efforts to remove heavy weapons from the front lines, the day-long bombardment, which includes tanks, rocket artillery, and howitzers, laid bare the shortcomings of international efforts to quell the conflict. A little bit more on Ukraine. NATO and Russia remain at loggerheads over Ukraine, the alliance, but they have discussed a proposal to try and improve air safety over the Baltic Sea. NATO allies reiterate their strong support for Ukrainian sovereignty and territorial integrity and insist that they would never recognize Russia's illegal and illegitimate annexation of Crimea, said Hans Stoltenberg, Secretary General of NATO. After the NATO-Russian Council of the Main Forum dialogue met in Brussels Monday for more than 3 hours. In a statement later, Russia's NATO ambassador, Alexander Grishko, said that he had raised Ukrainian ceasefire violations with the Allies, notably through the use of heavy weapons. NATO members have also accused Russia of similar violations. In other words, he did it. Well, no, he did it. he did it too. That's not Ukraine's only worry. The National Bank of Ukraine claims Privat Bank has 15.2 billion hryvnia in its correspondent accounts. Privat Bank has become public. Over the past day, people withdrew 2 billion hryvnia from Privat Bank's ATMs. We don't know yet how much money was withdrawn from other banks. We have to receive this information from payment systems as we inquired about this. On December 18th, Cabinet Ministers announced its decision to nationalize Privat Bank, the largest privately held bank of the Ukraine. The government intends to issue 30-year domestic government loan notes worth 150 billion hryvnia, $5.54 billion, and become 100% owner of the bank. The first bank's deputy CEO announced the decision was made after an unprecedented information attack on the bank and a threat it could pose to its clients. The bank's leadership assured clients their savings will be safe, naming it the key condition in the talks. In his turn, Minister of Finance Alexander Danielik confirmed the clients' money will be safe and protected by the state. Due to the nationalization procedure, Privat Bank halted corporate transactions for 1 day until 9 a.m. December 20th. So, Russia has banking problems too. Alright, last story, I promise. As Jews in Dallas around the world gather this weekend to celebrate Hanukkah, commemorating the miraculous victory of a small army of Jewish Maccabees over the oppressive Seleucid Empire and the rededication of the Temple in Jerusalem, another Jewish story of defied odds is playing out in Ukraine. Thousands of Jews from eastern Ukraine fled fighting and found refuge in cities around the country. These displaced Jews, the first in Europe since the war in the former Yugoslavia, caused thousands of Jews to flee Sarajevo, were not turned away. They found Jewish communities across Ukraine in Kharkov and Dnepropetrovsk, Odessa, and Dnipro, responding to their needs and helping them attain some sense of normalcy. These communities, with critical support from Jewish and Christian aid groups and many others, have provided aid to displaced, including foods, medicine, post-trauma support, accommodation, and even support to start small businesses by those who chose not to return to their former homes. They were also welcomed the displaced into Jewish life of these cities, offering subsidized or free entrance to holiday celebrations, summer camps, and educational opportunities. Incredibly, these people, their lives upended, became active members of their new communities. Rather than be daunted by many challenges, joblessness, lack of housing, and the need to acclimatize their children to the new city, Valeria is today a case manager for a local family social service provider, aiding at-risk families and children with special needs. She took her skills and experience and gratitude for the help her family received when they arrived in Kiev to benefit those that welcomed her when she was most in need. The spirit of giving back has gained traction among Ukraine's young Jewish adults and scores of seniors who renounced the Soviet-era scorn for service and philanthropic pursuits by volunteering in the hundreds to care for the neediest. Indeed, a number of Jewish communities also contribute to Ukraine's civic life, from the political sphere to industry to culture. So there is some good news coming out of Ukraine. Sorry I ran over. And on that note, folks, remember you can always find me on Twitter at Jessie's POV. And on that note, I'm out of here. I'm over time.